Yeah, we've gone through the good, which is time can help you build wealth easily. We've talked about the bad, which is timing. Actually, if you make decisions poorly or you're not good at figuring out how to use the resource of time, it actually can have an amplified impact. And then the ugly, unfortunately, is time's fleeting.
Yeah, this is a big one that I think far too often people recognize far too late. I mean, when we're young, and I'll speak on behalf of young people out there, we've got all the time in the world and we feel like, oh, we have all this freedom and it doesn't matter. I can catch up with this later or I can figure that thing out later. Not recognizing how valuable this resource is and that if we don't pay attention to it and we blink, it does tend to run away from us. And then when we recognize it, it's really hard to go claw it back.
Thinking about this next slide that we're about to pull up, we should have put, because we've done it in the shows before, a country lyric or something like that, because we always like to show, because we know time is fleeting, but there's also how all the obligations of life that happen. So sometimes you get so busy. There's a reason we always, when we're talking about 30-somethings, we're always talking about the messy middle, is because you have so much pulling on you. And look at this illustration. And we always call this the Reby illustration. And when we're doing the content meetings, because I don't know that she loves seeing this, but it's the comparison of your commitments of life compared to how much disposable time you have. And it really does show you life is not fair.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is it does end up catching up to you as you advance in your career and you have more job responsibilities, as you get married, as you have kids, as you start a family, as you have community involvement, as you have all these other things that start pulling on you. One day you wake up and you say, holy cow, I'm not in control of my time anymore. In my 20s, I would sleep till whenever, and I'd wake up and I'd eat whenever, and I'd go do whatever. And then all of a sudden, there's no more time for whatever. And that is a harsh reality. And what ends up happening is as we get so busy, oftentimes we crowd out those important things. We crowd out those important decisions because literally life is moving so fast, we don't even have time to stop and think. And we find ourselves in that position. And it's just a reality. So the things that you can do early on to prevent yourself from finding yourself in that place are incredibly valuable. And the earlier you recognize, the more valuable it can be.
Yeah, I think it's worth drawing attention to, just like we talk about putting money to work as fast as you can, it just because that compounding effect can have a dramatic impact to your future self. The same thing can be said for your time. I mean, if you think about, because what's the best way that you can actually build wealth is actually increasing the size of your shovel, your ability to make income. When you are in your 20s and you don't have kids, maybe you don't have a significant other, but you have tremendous amounts of disposable time, you don't have disposable income, because you're probably not at your peak earning years. That happens in your late 40s, early 50s, but you definitely are in your peak time period. Don't get busy doing nothing.
That's right.
You make sure that you're very deliberate with how you're spending your time, because what I want you to do, and this is the important component and conversation to have on time. I get it. You don't have money while you're in your 20s. But if you can use it wisely, a little bit goes a long way if you can start working, because guess what happens? When you have time in just abundance and you take it for granted, if you will invest and use maybe that time to maximize, take a little bit of that for the future, you get to own your time when you get older. And that's what truly, when we talk about financial independence, and people, when we've picked up, we've done fire shows, they're like, you don't completely understand fire and all these other things. I'm like, I think I do understand fire. It's because you don't have to retire. A lot of people, fire movement is, financial independence, retire early. It's not necessarily retiring. It just means you do life on your terms.
Right.
You actually own your time. You're no longer having to work to pay the bills. The only way that happens is if you flip this backwards, where you put in something early enough so that it can catch traction, hit critical mass, start working for you. So when we get to the next slide on how we actually spend our time, you will have the flexibility to actually be more purposeful as you get older and you realize how scarce time is. You realize how powerful it is to build memories, how important it is to spend time with your family and friends. You will see the more money and resources, because of your dedication and maximizing time when you're youthful, is going to be rewarded in the future.
We say this all the time, right? You know, we subscribe to the Malcolm Gladwell concept that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. Whatever you're trying to do, you need to do it for 10,000 hours before you can become an expert in that thing. Well, I don't think what most folks realize is that in our 20s, when we have all the disposable time, we're going to spend that 10,000 hours doing something. Is your 10,000 hours going to be spent playing video games or watching TV or scrolling through social media or fill in the blank? Or is your 10,000 hours going to be developing relationships, pouring into people, developing new skill sets, getting a new degree, passing certifications? You have to figure out what you're going to do with your 10,000 hours. And if you can choose to do things that will have a payoff for you later, I'm pretty sure that your future self will thank you.
Yeah, and that leads to a great transition, because this is one. Look, y'all know I have a daughter that's in college now. I also, that puts every time we go on a vacation, every time there is like we just got through with the Christmas holidays where school was out, so she's home for a few weeks. I just know it's extra sweet because this will go away really quick. And that's the part when you see this, I saw this on Twitter first, and then I did a deeper dive on it myself, just looking into it. It will make you cry if you think about the fact that I'm probably in that upper 90% of I've spent that the time I'm going to spend with my oldest daughter is probably definitely in the 90% range right now, meaning that I've already... The time of my entire life with my child is in the rearview mirror, because the other 10% will be, for holiday visits, for other things. You don't think about that when you bring them home from the hospital. You're thinking about, oh my gosh, I got to change another stinky diaper. I'm going to have no sleep for the next 2 to 3 months.
Got to get them to practice.
That's where it's that whole country music song that I kind of alluded to, is that you're going to miss this because the days are long, but the years are short. And this is the part I want you to be purposeful. If you do things right and you use the resource of time, you use the 3 ingredients of wealth creation, which is your discipline, deferred gratification to create margin, which equals money that gets invested, you will be the controller. You will be the person that takes command of how you actually spend your time, not because you have to pay the bills. It's because you want to, and you wake up with purpose every morning. That's happiness, Bo. That's where fulfillment is.
I think what's amazing is when you look at this chart and you kind of like synthesize the data, what it shows me is the decisions that we make really, really matter. And there's obviously, Brian, you talked about children, which I can't talk about it too much or I'll start getting emotional too. But when you think about who we spend the most time with, when you look at this chart, there are 2 categories that really, really stick out to me, sort of in the whole life cycle. The person you choose to partner with, the partner that you spend time with, you spend a lot of time with that person over your life. So you want to make sure that you make a really good decision there and that you don't rush into a flippant decision. We've talked about some of the negative things that can happen in wealth building or when you don't make a good choice there. And then the other are your coworkers, the people that you sit next to for most of the hours that you work with every day. You are going to spend a lot of time with those human beings. So you want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people, the kind of people that you want to be surrounded, the kind of people that you want to be consuming that time. I would think as you begin to make, especially if you're someone young in the early stages of your career, in the early stages of your life, those decisions matter because this valuable, precious asset that you have called time, you're going to spend a lot of time with those people. So make sure you're making that decision wisely.